Hello, DevOps people. Hello, Division by Zero. Hello, Marcus. How are you? Yeah, co-working. I thought I'd do another stream. I'd like to continue my Netdata research stuff that I did yesterday, and even though I regularly scheduled my live stream for tomorrow, I thought, well, why not share what I'm doing today? And so I'm online again. I know, I'm not streaming for weeks, and then again, I'm doing it 2 days in a row, and then I'm taking another break for a few weeks. You know what? I'm not letting the past define my future. I'll keep streaming when I feel like it, and that doesn't mean that I'm not going to also honor my planned stream for tomorrow. I hope so, at least. And we'll see. So, what I'm going to do today is doing some Netdata stuff and maybe some other work that I may or may not share on screen. We'll see. I'll continue my Pomodoro approach, where I work 25 minutes at a time and taking breaks in between. And we'll see if there will be some non-broadcast or non-interactive parts later. I'll decide that on a whim. Okay, so what we've done so far was I tried to learn more about Netdata, an open source monitoring software for Linux that collects metrics from all kinds of system and service sources, and also allows to set up alerting based on these metrics. And I did not quite get the results that I wanted, at least not in my Chef test instance. And that's why today I've set up a brand new Ubuntu machine in VirtualBox. That's an Ubuntu 18, and I've just finished setting it up. And in this virtual machine, I'm going to do a completely fresh and manual install of Netdata, and we'll see how that is going to work. Let me just check off my last 2 checklist items here. Start broadcast and get a drink. I did get myself a tea. Feel free to get yourself a beverage of your choice as well, and simply let's do some work here together. Speaking of which, the chat over here. Yeah, and that's what I meant by co-working. We can do a little bit of work together, or we might even end up working side by side, where I'm not working on screen and simply doing something in the background, and you can take care of your own things during that time. We'll see. Okay, so let's see. Here is my Ubuntu 18 in VirtualBox. Let's see if I can install my familiar package, my familiar terminal system. Why is that not available? Two other housekeeping items. I started streaming in 1080p. If there are any issues, let me know in chat, and let's make this thing interactive. And so if you want to give me feedback, if you want to share something yourself, pop into Twitch chat and let's have an interactive session here. Okay, so we have a few upgrades, but at the moment I'm only interested in Kitty. Why is that not? Does that have a different name? Let's find out. is not available. That's strange. Is that only available from Ubuntu 20 on, apparently? Okay, not to worry. I'll make do with the existing GNOME terminal. Shouldn't make too much of a difference. Let's see, what's that? The software updated. Computer needs to restart. Restart later. Okay. Now, let's go for a Ubuntu install of Netdata. So let's go to netdata.cloud. Go to the docs. Installation. Linux with one-line installer. I don't mind doing a curl bash here. I assume they'll sudo automatically, so let's see, can I actually paste something in here? I actually did install the guest additions, which should allow me to do a remote copy and paste, shouldn't it? Input keyboard. Shared clipboard. Host to guest, guest to host. Let's try and make it bidirectional. Does that mean I should now be able to paste? Let's try and copy this again. Oh yeah, okay. Oh yeah. Okay, sudo apt install curl. Looks like we're missing a few basics here. Wow, okay, I assumed it would install it from the package repository, but it looks like it's doing a complete compilation. So how's your day going so far? Mine has been pretty nice, despite a little bit of rain. I got a free coffee from Starbucks because they're introducing online orders now, which doesn't make much sense to me, but hey, if I get a coupon, I'm going to use it. And I was able to register for my COVID vaccination, so I should get an appointment date shortly. That's also good to know. So yeah, a package installation would have taken far less time, and I think this is taking really long. I'm going to cancel this. Also, in order to be a little bit more similar to how we do install Netdata on our own servers. So let's go to the alternative way of using the deb packages. Stable releases. Quick install instructions for Debian. Another thing wants to be called bashed, but in this case I'm okay with it because it simply installs the package cloud repository for Netdata Debian packages. Also, why is chat not appearing on my video? Let me take a look while this is setting up. Okay, let me test this. Ah, here we go. This should now be permanent. Good stuff. So now we should be able to install the Netdata package. And this is going to be Netfilter? Oh, Netdata, here we go, yeah. Okay, that's that. Yeah, let's use service net data start. Okay. I work as root from here on out because it's all system stuff anyway. Let me see what the Netdata configuration looks like. Oh, okay. Okay, see, this already explains one of the issues I had yesterday. So the Netdata installation is geared towards web files being owned by root. And our own legacy configuration, I'm calling it legacy because it's been around for a while, was using Netdata as its owner. But since the package installs, of which I'm pretty sure the package installs the web files with root as the owner, because the default configuration also has the same approach, I was running into issues where Netdata security measures kicked in because the Netdata user was not equal to the owner of the files, and so it's actually intended that these files are owned by root because root seems to be the default user here, even though the Netdata run user, as we can see up here, is Netdata. So the Netdata service runs as user Netdata, but the web files will be owned by root. Which might actually make sense, because that means the default user isn't root. System program problem. Ubuntu, what's your problem? No report? Okay. Then shut up. What I was about to say was Netdata itself runs as user Netdata, which is nice from a security standpoint if it doesn't run as root. But the web files being owned by root, and therefore requiring this configuration line here, is also a nice separation, because that means only root can modify these web files. And if someone else would own these files, Netdata would not serve them anymore. So we are also secure against the case that somehow this Netdata user gets compromised due to a bug or something, due to a vulnerability. And then people modify Netdata's web files, which also means the by default publicly available dashboard would now serve arbitrary stuff through the compromised Netdata user, and this separation prevents that. It does make sense to me. Okay, that's that. Let's see if the dashboard is actually available, and it should be available on localhost port 19999. Yes, and it is. So by default, everything is working. And it binds only to localhost, so it does not by default expose the Netdata dashboard to the public, only if you run on localhost, which is also a great approach for a default installation. Either you access it from localhost because you're logged into the machine, or you might want to do a port forwarding via SSH, where you can then connect localhost on this machine to some port on your machine, and then access the dashboard via the SSH connection to your Netdata server. Both are good approaches for a default installation. I do like this. Also, process scheduling policy to idle and boom score 1000 is also something we should adopt in production. So the Netdata service does not eat up valuable system resources if the system is under high pressure. Nice, 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 nice. And also it's very minimal. I do like that. Okay, that's an important learning here, because that means I will be able to adapt our own Netdata setup to a point where I might actually be able to get our own setup working as my new test system, where I don't have to use this VirtualBox instance anymore. So let's go right ahead and try this out. Let's start a Tmux session for our chef cookbooks. There we go. And where's the Netdata cookbook? So that reminds me, I might want to use a different branch. Either I'll switch to an experimental branch, or I'll actually use one of the issues I created yesterday after the stream. Let me see. Well, they're not directly related. On the other hand, they'll definitely improve things for my work. I guess I'll save myself the formal way of having to do merge requests and things like that by simply working from a private branch. Okay, so I will still be able to resolve these issues if my experiments are successful. Then I'll simply send a combined merge request, I guess. So all I have to do is make sure I make well-structured commits. So what I'm going to do is I'll first make this stream setup optional. So I'll introduce a new node attribute, Netdata freestyle. Stream enabled. Question is, do I make it true by default for backwards compatibility? Yeah, I think that is always a good option. Be backwards compatible, and if I want to change this, we can do that in a specific rollout later. But let's stay backwards compatible by default. So enabled will now depend on this node attribute. That's node Netdata freestyle stream enabled, and if that's true, then we'll use yes, and if it's not true, then we'll use no. And then I'll introduce the same for the web module. And that's false by default, because that has been our approach up until now. So that's going to be another Netdata config resource here. I guess we can simply reuse this line from down here. And since I'm configuring it here, of course, I'll have to remove it from the section up there. So that means now the web module has its own configuration, and I'm going to actually steal the default settings from our standard install here, where I say web files owner and web files group and bind to localhost. So I guess these are all strings. Web files owner. Ah, yeah, I see. Yeah, that's these are all strings, and it's using the standard hash rockets. Web files owner, please root, which will simplify things. And web files group, right? Here's Netdata. Was the other thing? Bind to localhost, which we'll have to provide in an attribute, I'd say. Bind to... Here we're going to use another node attribute that I'm going to introduce. So that's going to be netdata dash price. Did we always use a namespace level of the node attributes that is cookbook dependent, and under that we try to have one single additional layer with our attribute names. We try to avoid nesting the attributes even deeper, because that often leads to a lot of nil handling or exists calls and things like that. If there can but may not be, or layers below. So I call that web bind to. And the default for that is going to be localhost, but we'll be able to modify that and make it bind to a public interface. Okay. That's that. That means I'll have to work in Docker here. Yesterday I was planning to use VirtualBox with Vagrant in my Windows subsystem, but that doesn't really work well, except if you have your project files in your Windows user directory, which then gets mounted into the into the Linux subsystem, and that then has severe performance implications again, similar to what I experienced with Docker for desktop on the Mac, where this file system transfer mounting stuff caused huge delays and severe performance degradation. So I'm not going to do that. So instead I'm going to use Docker, which runs inside WSL. That's easy to do with Test Kitchen. I'll just have to set a environment variable, and then I should be able to use the Docken kitchen driver, provided I'm in the project directory. Test kitchen list should now... Oh, we don't have Docker running. That's something we can actually resolve. Oh wait, that wasn't what I wanted to do. To start Docker from desktop. Now, let's see. Oh, here we go. I forgot to run my Pomodoro timer. Feels as if It was time for another break. You know what? Let's simply start a converge run for my test system here, client Ubuntu 16.04. And while this is running and installing, I'll take a short break. See you in a minute.
What's that music? Let me quickly
switch to something more chill. Good heavens. All right, so here we are. Test kitchen has converged, so we should have a Netdata setup now, and I'm really curious if it's going to work and if the it won't have the web setup by default because I forgot to change my default attributes. So let's quickly go and fix that. Instead of the attributes file, I'm going to change the kitchen YAML file, so only for these test instances the attributes will be changed. And let's say attributes netdata-freestyle web_enabled true. And I think we can also prevent a few headaches by setting the stream configuration, by disabling the stream configuration by default. At least in this configuration, you can always go ahead and create a new configuration. I could call it client stream. Where stream is true and web is false. However, yesterday I ran into the issue that shortening the name of test suites doesn't work quite right if they are too similar. So I'm going to use more or use less ambiguous names. In this case, I'll call it stream. And why not call it no key? That should make it easier to simply call it TKC client, and it won't actually converge two test suites at a time. So that's that, and we will need a reconverge. Now I can simply call it I shouldn't have changed the names while test suites were already running, because that will confuse test kitchen a lot. So let's go back and at least, well, okay, in this case the client name wasn't changed. That should actually work. So how am I not the Netdata directory? Here we are. Okay. It did change the configuration, yes. Okay, that looks good. Another thing that I'd like to change, so I don't forget, is can I even change that? Looks like I can't, actually. I noticed that the Netdata configuration actually is owned by the Netdata user, which might also be a security issue. Because especially in the new setup where we try to isolate Netdata as the Netdata user, but have the web files owned by root. So there's a clear separation. I think in the same sense, the Netdata main configuration itself should also be owned by root and only be modifiable by root, but of course readable by Netdata. So that's something I'd like to change. However, it looks like the Netdata cookbook that provides us with these predefined resources like Netdata config and Netdata stream seems to use the Netdata user by default. And I think it's worth investigating if we can change that. So let me go here. And let's see, Netdata Chef cookbook. There are not too many default attributes here. So let's take a direct look at the resources. In this case, Netdata config. Let me see if I can make it a little bit bigger. There we go. So this resource uses the base resource, the template base resource. Owner is new resource owner, so I can actually provide attributes owner and group. And default is Netdata, but I'm pretty sure we will be better off using root as the owner of these configuration files. We can still have Netdata as a group and have it group readable. Otherwise, it's not going to work anyway, but that will provide us with a nice separation of concerns here. So what I'm going to do is make this explicit using owner root and group Netdata. And also let's take a look if there is another thing with the mode. No, there is no mode attribute for this. They don't even use a mode here. Interesting. Okay. Going to try it anyway. I can also take a look at my reference installation here. Still using the Ubuntu standard password. Yeah. Stuff is even owned by the root group here. So we should be okay with using root as our owner. Let's take a look at the actual installation inside my chef test instance here. Now I can simply say kitchen login client, and it's going to be unambiguous Netdata. How does it look here? Okay, so everything is owned by root, but the Netdata conf file, which has the Netdata group, and I think we can switch that to root as well. Same goes for the stream configuration. I'm pretty sure the Netdata service gets started. Yeah, of course, like all these services, they get started with the root user and then they drop their privileges as soon as they can and switch owners or switch their user account. So yeah, let's make this a little bit more secure by using the same configuration here, but with root. Come on. So we should now have a working web interface as well. Interesting. Okay. Let's find out. Localhost 19,999. Yes. Okay. You know what? I think that's a good opportunity to actually even write a test for this. $19,999 should not only be listening. Ooh, the ice cream van is approaching. Describe HTTP. I do know a little boy who needs to be dragged away from the front door now. Localhost 1999. It should be let's actually look up the HTTP resource. That's inspec HTTP source. Its status. Should CMP 200. Okay. Okay. So if I go back to my shell, a test kitchen verify client should be successful. however, it's not. Yes, of course, we can't go use HTTPS here. Typing HTTPS by default is a good sign, but it's not going to work here. Nice. So we definitely got further than yesterday, where I couldn't even get the web interface working because of these permissions issues. Thank you, Division by Zero. You're right. I started at 25, so you'll get a little bit of bonus time. Okay. So, let me take stock where we are now. Are we now desynchronized with you being on break time now? Well, your break, if I get what you mean, your break time will be a little bit longer than mine. Taking the rest of the week off. How can this even happen? Not yet that long, okay. Then enjoy your break. Excited to talk soon. Okay, now I'm starting to crave ice cream myself. Right. I guess having these issues here also helps getting my mind realigned. Streaming optional, yep. We've achieved that. Streaming is not enabled anymore in this test configuration. But we have a new test suite that will still set up streaming. And then there's improved language in Netdata for Istelia. We have a remnant of less enlightened times in our setup here, where we still use the term master for the machine that gets all our metrics, and that needs to be changed to something less loaded. But that also requires us to... Well, it actually does not require us to change our production setup if I do it in a smart way. So let's go ahead and do that as well. And I think that's pretty easy because I can simply... Oh, wait a minute. Sneeze coming on. Let's look at the light. Doesn't work. Okay. Oof. Survived it. Okay, so if I want to change this terminology here, I can do that by simply using our legacy language as the fallback, or as the default way. So by using node netdata-freestyle master underscore API key or empty string, I can actually use this as stream API key, and the same for master host. Instead of master host, we'll introduce stream host, but we'll use node Netdata freistyle master host. We use this value if it's still set, because we haven't updated our production attributes yet. Otherwise, it's going to be empty string. The same goes for master port. We'll call it stream port. That's much more neutral and still describes perfectly what we want to set up here. And now we can use master port here. And if that's not set, and hopefully it isn't, then we'll use 1999. That way, we've eliminated this term from our attributes, and the only thing we need to do now is stop using it. So let me see where it's getting used. So instead of master host, we'll use stream host. Instead of master port, we'll use stream port. Instead of master API key, use stream API key. And we'll only do this if master host is not an empty string. Or if stream host is not an empty string. That's it. And I can even do this with the master recipe that we use for the stream host by simply introducing a new recipe called stream host. Stream target. Stream node. What's the terminology Netdata themselves use here? Yes, we can close that. Configuration, data collection, parent-child streaming. Local Netdata is a child without any database or alarms, collects metrics and sends them to another Netdata parent. That's exactly what I'm looking for, so we'll call it stream parent.rb. Our current production setup still is going to reference the master.rb recipe, but we can start switching that by simply doing an include recipe Netdata master here. And that way I can start using the stream parent recipe in my test files here, even though our production will still reference master. Or we could do it the other way around. That would be even better. So it's clear that master is deprecated and stream parent is the actual file. Yeah, that makes much more sense. So let's take the include recipe out of here and into here. And then we'll take everything out of here. Into here. And that's the stream underscore parent recipe. And that way that's also an interesting approach here, that there is an attribute enabled plugins where we can actually delegate the plugin setup to sub-recipes that are not yet written. That would make our recipes a little bit more readable. They're not too long yet, but they might become. So let's do one change at a time. Let's do one change at a time. Also, for the stream parent, we only disable registry and statsd. Set up stream configuration. But we don't actively set up the web configuration. That's something we should do though. So I'm going to take this out of... No, not... I'm going to copy this out of our client or agent setup. And take it I guess in this case I can actually set this to yes. Why would we stream to a parent if not to use its web interface, I'd say. So, I'd say should be yes on a fixed basis. Master delegates to the stream parent recipe. Which means my tests should still work. The parent might just be a routing parent that forwards to another parent, or even backend only, something to a InfluxDB or something like that. Okay, you've convinced me. We'll keep this. Oh, why not keep it dynamic anyway? Makes sense. Okay, so now we have the stream parent. set up, and I'd like to switch my tests to also use the new recipe now. So we'll have to actually rename this to stream. I think we already did rename it to stream in our test suite configuration anyway, right? No key and stream, yeah. Interestingly enough, we use the default recipe in all these cases. Because, well, installation mode delegates to different things. Wait, how does this actually look like? We don't set installation mode here. I would say we should change this. To make this more explicit. And just not use the default recipe in any way. We'll use client. We'll even use child or agent. But I don't mind using a more generic name here. So client uses client, no key uses client, just to test if it works without a stream host. And actually our stream test here works without the web enabled. Oh, well, in this case, I'd like to see it both, because that's how we use our stream parent. And I guess I... use this here as well. Okay. Now to rename our test suite here. How do I do that? Move the current node into stream. And call this stream spec. Okay. Yeah, that should do the trick. I guess I should give this a try and see if a full test run is still going to work. So let's show the list of test suites we have. Now we have master. We shouldn't have master anyway. Where does the master come from? Client, no key, and stream. Oh, up here. There's the master. Oh, I see. Stream is the stream client. Yeah, okay. I did create this instead of replacing this here. I overlooked that there is actually already a... Okay, and there's a mode attribute that I should take a look at as well. Okay, so we'll call this stream, or parent, call it parent. And we'll actually call Netdata price to stream parent. Still have an opportunity to shorten this to parent. Which I'm going to do. So we can actually get rid of this down here. Except these two lines. Don't think this mode attribute is actually necessary, or shouldn't be necessary, except if we don't want to have the client and stream parent recipe to collide. Yeah, because they conflict in what they set up, I guess. Okay, let's keep it for the time being. I'll simply move this down here and rename it to stream API key. Let's say we should also have stream setup. That works similar to client. I'll call that child. Make things pretty clear. Web enabled false, stream enabled true, and we'll use the same stream API key as we use on the parent. Well, while we are I think having these different use cases next to each other here makes me think if I shouldn't also rename client to something more specific. In this case, it's simply a solo agent setup. In a similar way, like I installed Netdata on my VirtualBox instance here. Because all of these down here are client setups. Oh, in this case, it's not even a client, because there is no upstream parent. And if I rename this test suite, I'm also inclined to rename the recipe as well. So we'll have a complete overhaul of our terminology here. But by simply reapplying what I did earlier, this should be possible without any breakage. Famous last words, I know. So, let's see. I think I'll look into the mode algorithm first. So we have client, we have child, and we have no key. Well, actually, why do... No key and client are pretty much the same. Because by default, we don't have a key set up. And I think that did not work at some point. But apparently now it does, because that's exactly what we are running right now. So I guess I can actually get rid of no key. And we have two differing agent setups. One is solo client and one is a child to an upstream parent. So I'm going to actually just rename this test suite after I've deleted the one I have running. And we call this single, and we'll call this child. And I'd say I'll move this down here. Okay. Now that my Pomodoro has run out, I'll simply go ahead and destroy my client test instance here, because when it's gone, I can rename the test suite. Now we have client, child, and parent. And I'll rename that to single, child, and parent. Which means I'll also have to rename this test suite here. I'll call this agent spec. Agent is the generic term in Netdata, right? Each Netdata is to another Netdata. They call it simply a Netdata. Okay. That's of course also possible. But outside of the context of streaming, here's the daemon config. Let's take a look at installation. Somewhere they need to have a substantive that helps me naming things. As we all know, naming things is one of the two hardest problems in computer science. The other ones being cache invalidation and off by one errors. Start detects the Linux installation. Let's download installs Netdata. Come on, you have to have a name for the machine or for the setup. Single node. Configuring the Netdata agent. Okay, here we go. So we call it single, child, parent. Okay. And while I'm running a full test suite to see if I've broken anything, I'm going to take another test. I'm going to take another break. Let's start the break timer. I'll see you.
DevOps people, what's poppin'?
Well, on the topic of parent-child relationships, I apologize for the interruption. The employee has been fired on the spot. And yes, that's an interesting question for us now. I guess it's stream bombing? Okay, so I've broken... yeah. Tough but fair. I broken things. Let's take a look. Could not find recipe parent. Yes, I forgot to rename that. Because that needs to be moved simply to parent. So let's try a converge of the already running single instance. Let's see if this works now. Oh, I could have started it from fresh because it did not even... Oh, wait. It's broken. Oh, the default thingy. Of course, yeah. I forgot to check how this whole default setup here works. So installation mode is mode, okay. And if it's client, oh, okay. I see. Let me think if I'd like to keep this indirection and simply going to default all the time. I think it makes sense. It simplifies things. but it's more than installation mode, so I'm going to rename this variable. It's actually operation mode. Then we install it. And then we delegate to the actual operation mode. Okay, I see. Takes a strain on my mind to juggle all these mental symlinks I have to set now. Okay, so first of all, that's not only installation mode, it's simply the run mode or operation mode. I guess I'll actually rename this. So where's my percent sign? That's over here. I have to ask myself this because I'm using a split keyboard that doesn't have the symbols. Oh, it does have the symbols on a different layer, so I have to actually think where to find them. And I'm going to change installation mode to run mode. Item Futuro, hi, welcome back. How do I go to definitions and method references in Vim with Ruby? That's a good question. I still haven't memorized that. While I'm actually using COC here in NeoVim, which enables me to actually do this even without C tags, I think. I'm not sure. At the moment, I've simply used a search and replace, and with this chef stuff here, I don't even think COC would work, because it would have to jump into some chef internal code, into the chef gem. But let me pull up my Obsidian and go into my Vim cheat sheet. Let me pull it over for you. Here we go. I haven't even written this down. Didn't read essentials. Here, it's control close square bracket if you use C tags. So you first have to use C tags to index your code, and Vim will then use the index file created by C tags to actually jump to the definition. And with Control T, you can then jump back to where you jumped off to. With the Ruby LSP, which is used by COC, it should work as well. But my chef code here isn't the best way to demonstrate that, because I don't have any methods and classes and stuff. A Rails application would be the better test ground for that. But that's something I'll write down in my stream notes for today. Next steps, test Vim code navigation with Ruby LSP. I'll take that as homework. Okay, so now we've renamed our run mode. And I guess we can still distinguish between client and master. And then simply have different client setups. Of course, I'll have to rename run mode. Run mode is going to be parent. If run mode is master, that will make sure that down here we are going to call the Netdata Freistyle parent recipe. Since we only go through the default recipe anyway, I can also get rid of the master recipe completely. So as long as we use master, the parent recipe gets used anyway, and we'll just over time change our mode attribute values to parent in the first place. So that should do the trick. Which also means we need to change our test setup to always use the default recipe. And simply use different modes. Which is actually the case. Let's do a full test run again. And going back to our issues here, that should resolve this issue, improve language. We also have made the streaming optional. Okay, still breaking. Let's see why. No method error. Undefined method empty for nil class in the default recipe line 14. Okay. Yes, master host is not non-existing because it's going to be stream host, and actually we'll go to parent host. Now that we know the full, that's going to be stream API key because it's used on child and parent. And that's actually code that should go in the client recipe. I can see why it's in here, because it makes this fail as quickly as possible. But that doesn't really matter in practice. We are talking about milliseconds here. So I think from a readability standpoint, this would be better placed at the beginning of the actual client recipe. Which also lets us get rid of this conditional here. Oops, wrong direction. Good. Now we need to rename our attributes again. We call this parent host and parent port. I guess only parent host and parent port. If I understand that correctly, it's not used in client, is it? Here we can actually rename it. Okay. And here we don't actively configure the port. Interesting, the stream uses the API key as its identifier. Is that the same as in the client? Here we only say stream. Okay. Does it matter? I don't think it does matter, because we passed the API key anyway. How does that work here? Here we don't. Interesting. Okay. Okay. Being able to configure the parent port does not get us far, because we can't actually change the parent, the port used by the parent. It'll always be the default port, 19999. But yeah, it doesn't hurt either. So let's try and converge single again. Interesting, single and child failed, and parent did actually work. Okay, let's do a full run of single then. I actually don't think there are a lot of thorough tests for parent yet. But still, it's a good thing that it works, that it at least converges. And we can always add more sophisticated tests. Okay, so converge of single does work, but tests all fail. That's interesting. Guess I need to look into single. Let me try and see what actually got set up here. Nothing. Netdata no parent host configured aborting. Okay, that explains things. So, yeah, we need to again update our... Oh, interesting. Yes, of course. Only if stream is enabled. We need to check these things. Otherwise... Oh, wait. So... Actually, we need to add another conditional again if node... Netdata Freestyle stream enabled. I guess we can simply... We could bundle this together, I think. Yeah, let's bundle this. So we don't need this not if. And we can actually do a log fail. Or is it log fatal? Let's look it up. Chef log resource. Chef resource. It's fatal. Okay. I think I would call fail. But use fatal as the log level. And we should actually fail. We should actually exit at this point and not return. Because that's the reason the cookbook execution stopped here, but it stopped successfully without doing anything. and then it ran the tests. If we use exit instead of, or even exit 1 instead of return, Converge will break with a failure, and Test Kitchen will not even run the tests. Because that was confusing, that the tests ran even though the cookbook didn't do anything because of these errors. Yeah, that should work better. Still did nothing. What else is missing? No parent host configured. But oh yes, of course, because single. Well, we have stream enabled false. That is strange. Let's do another converge one for single. Now it says no parent host configured aborting. However, stream enabled is false. So this shouldn't even kick in. We could also shorten this, because it's pretty repetitive. Yeah, I'll make a note to do this later. To do refactor using a list of words, in this case parent host and stream API key, so we have a single conditional here. And it's time for another break. I will see you. And here we go again. Getting back to what you wrote, Aiton Futuro, installed Ruby LSP in NeoVim. I'm not sure if you meant the same as I did, because so far I only know the COC plugin that uses SolarGraph as its LSP. But I saw that there's also talk about an LSP built into NVim, and so you might actually be using something different from what I am used to. I'm not really sure about that, but that's definitely something I'll go and research as soon as I found out. But first I'm going to find out why Converge breaks and Verify still runs, completely failing, of course. I think we have a code path that is still not updated. And what's the default mode anyway? Is client. So let's move this up here so it gets clear. Stream API key goes down here. We can even group these things a little bit. Oh, that was a little bit much. Okay. These two attributes don't have any function anyway, so we can get rid of them. Okay, so let's run another single run. That's default. And now it should delegate to client. Still installing. That's more than happened before. I think I forgot to actually save the default recipe with which still had the original pre-flight checks in, and here we go. Converge and Verify work. That's what I wanted to see. Let's also run the second client recipe, which was called child. See. We need another check. Let me add that while the test is running. In client, since I've only newly introduced the stream-enabled attribute, which I'd like to make default. I guess we'll also have to check for parent host, because that was the way we used before. Actually master host, but that already gets translated into parent host. And now we can do the refactoring as well, but let me check my test first. Okay, so now we actually exit with no parent host configured. Why is that? Child. Oh, does actually not have a parent host set up. Okay, that's bad. Wait. Parent host. Localhost. Actually, I don't like pointing it on itself. That sounds really, really recursive. And I guess it should work with any hostname in here. Let's see if it converges. Nice, and does verify work as well. Not sure, we don't have any test cases for child. Okay, that's not a problem, which means a full test suite should work now, and I'm going to run one. And while this is running, I'll do the refactoring in client. What I wanted to do was do something like %w parent host stream API key each do check attribute and if node check attribute empty no check attribute figured aborting. And we can delete this and outdent this. Things are looking good. I guess I should also somehow document. What we have. I guess I can actually get away without writing stuff in the README. Simply do something that I seldom do, which is add a comment. Replicated attributes. Let's use actual markdown master host. Use parent host. Instead, master port. Use parent port instead. Same goes for master. No, it's master API key. Use stream API key instead. With these settings, we are backwards compatible to what is already in production, and eventually I might switch them to stream-enabled false and web-enabled true, because it's the simpler use case, and that would mean I'd have to make it a breaking change where we would have to actively set these attributes in our production environment before we can actually roll this out. And I think that's exactly the right way to go about things. Okay. That was a full test suite, all successful. Nice. Okay. Let's find out if base path is actually something we do need. Ah, yeah, thought so. Okay, where are we now? I've cleaned up structure of the cookbook. We've eliminated the term master. We made streaming optional, but default. We made local web dashboards optional or possible, but off by default. I guess having web dashboard on our upstream parent is the default setup. So I guess I'd like to actually test this. Yeah, it is enabled already for the parent test suite, but it doesn't get actually tested. And I think I'll simply copy this simple test from my stream spec. It should be called parent, I just realized. So let's paste this in here. And then we'll have to rename this. To parent. And we'll call it parent spec. Because that means the parent test suite did actually not run any tests. Because of the mismatch between the name of the test suite and the name of the directory. Now that I've renamed the directory, the test should have a verify phase as well. That might be the reason why the parent test suite didn't cause any issues up until now, because it simply didn't run any tests. I've started writing a blog post about my switch from Mac to Windows. Yesterday, with the issues accessing VirtualBox from WSL and these things, I quickly considered actually switching to Linux, because I knew that VirtualBox would run there without any issues and would be able to easily communicate with Vagrant as well. But I decided to stick with Windows because, for example, I would have to have streaming set up for coding work in Linux, but I'm thinking about also streaming World of Warcraft from time to time on this channel. Not too much, but simply to mix content a little bit. And then I would have to have basically a synced streaming setup for Windows, where I do my gaming stuff. So I decided to stick with Windows and simply not use Vagrant at the moment until Vagrant and VirtualBox can actually work together without me having to put my project files in the Windows file system, which is awfully slow in WSL. Here in WSL I have my own Linux file system which runs all purposes as fast as on native Linux, and I'm not going back to the situation where I have a mounted file system that slows down everything like on the Mac. Even though this time it would be Vagrant and not Docker. Okay, so surprisingly the parent test suite finished successfully even with tests. So I think we could actually finish work here, at least in relation to the GitLab issues I was aiming to solve. Let's start by committing stuff. So what have we done? We changed a lot of attributes and recipes and tests. There's now parent recipe instead of a master recipe. Master spec has been renamed to parent spec. Client spec is now in the single test suite. There's also a child test suite without tests, unfortunately, but that's something we can add later. Okay. Let's commit this. Interesting, we don't have any identity here yet. Okay. So, what do we call this commit? Cookbook. Refactor Netdata. Still. Book. This change. Modifies the structure and terminology of the cookbook. It resolves issue number. Um, 645. Really? 645? Oh, I might. No, it's 654. Thought so. 654. Replacing the term master with parent. So we can write a resolves number 654. So I think we can actually play it like this. It resolves number 655 by introducing node attributes to switch the web and stream features on or off. For backwards compatibility, web is off by default and stream is on by default. Lumjacker, welcome to Full Stack Live. Happy to have you here. How are things today?
It's a Unix system. I know this.
It's a Unix system. It actually is, even if it's running in Windows subsystem for Linux. Thanks for following. I really appreciate it. Okie dokie. Writing this, I realize web is off by default and stream is on by default. That means it would actually, in production, switch off the web interface of our streaming parent host, wouldn't it? That's an interesting thought. I guess I could look at our current code. No, I'm not a freelance full-stack developer. I'm the co-founder and CTO of a web hosting company. We specialize in high-performance hosting for Drupal and WordPress. And towards this goal, we run more than 600 Linux servers. And on this stream, I'm mostly doing infrastructure work, but also work on our user dashboard. So it's actually covering a broad range of topics, from network configuration in the Linux operating system up to actual CSS changes in our user dashboard. So yeah, that's pretty much full stack, I guess. Yeah, many of our customers are, we run the website. Many of our customers are web agencies, and these web agencies also, again, serve big companies like newspapers, magazines like the Rolling Stone magazine, organizations like Doctors Without Borders or Greenpeace, companies that really need websites that are reliable and can withstand a beating. For example, if there is a humanitarian crisis and people want to go and donate to Doctors Without Borders. The name of the company is Freistil IT, a German name because the company was founded in Germany, but it's now based in Ireland, where I live. But sure, do I have a job command? Actually, I don't. I remember having something like that. Let me look it up, because that will save me a little bit of writing. Interesting. Nope. So I'll give you the website for our hosting product. Does hosting matter for SEO? Yes, it does, actually, because In a way, algorithms like Google's ranking algorithm also take into account how quick websites respond to web requests. And that means the faster your website responds to incoming web requests, the better it will rank. Or on the other side, if your website is really, really slow, Google will probably put you lower in its ranking. And that way, the quality of your hosting will influence how well you are ranked in search results. Okay, my Pomodoro timer is blinking heavily. Which means I'm going to take another break and we'll wrap things up. If you have any questions, we can wrap up with a Q&A session, and I'll be happy to answer your questions. For example, the question that Lamjacker just wrote. I'll be back in a few minutes and we'll do a Q&A round, okay? Okay. Okay, you know what? Let's cut this break short. Skip. No. Skip break and start working. Does not work. Well, we'll simply let it run out. Dota 2 attitude. Hey, welcome to Full Stack Live. Happy to have you here. How's life? So, and Creature Next as well. Hello again. Nice to see you. So, let's go into the final round for today. School done again. For today or for good, or tell us more? Okay, so let's go in the final round for today, which is going to be our Q&A round. I'll just take a minute to wrap my code commit here up. You have your computer science degree! Congratulations! That's awesome! Now to make some money, I guess. That's great. What's next for you? That's awesome. I'm really happy to see that. Let's hope the work is going to pay off. You're working. Okay, okay. Yeah, I back in the 90s, I got my degree by a hair. I just made it because I started starting businesses during college, and that was quite the distraction, to put it mildly. I made money working through college. That wasn't the issue, but studying was the issue. But still, I got it. But I'll admit, for years after finishing, I still dreamt of failing, and failing my whole degree, and having studied for nothing. I didn't even have to work. I simply wanted to work, and because I studied what I had fun with, which is computers, and was eager to learn everything that everything related to it. And in the end, I almost failed my degree. But still, yeah, it was a worthwhile experience. It definitely made sense to spend the time studying. Hope the same goes for you. Final design project was so typical. The client was overly critical of our project, and as a result, I only got an 80 out of 100. But that's still good. According to the professor. So the professor proxied your work to the client and returned with critical feedback. Okay, that's always a bit dubious, isn't it? A third party to which you did not have direct contact. What a strange setup. That's not what happens in practice, is it? Well, anyway, what I wanted to do is I started this not really knowing how I would go about the GitLab issues, so that's why I was working in a branch called Netdata Experiments. Now that I've actually resolved both of my issues, I can actually move everything to a branch that is named 655 Netdata Refactor. And that way it'll be connected to issue 655. And since I have the magic words resolves here, it'll resolve both issues once the merge request is approved. So let's simply check out a different branch called 655 Netdata Refactor. And we can now remove the Netdata experiment. Now we can push. Now we can create a merge request. Oh, wrong window. It's my browser here. Source branch 655 Netdata Refactor remote does not okay, we actually, yeah, okay, so the link got broken. Should be able to fix that by simply fixing the URL. Okay. And now, ladies and gentlemen, prepare your questions because we're about to go into Q&A mode once I've submitted this. Close 655, just to be sure that things actually work like I want them to. I'll also write a closes number 654, even though resolves should do the trick. You know what? I really want this to work, so let's give this a try. We'll squash and merge this, and I'd like to have this reviewed. Does make sense. And it says mentions number 654 and 655, so I would assume that both will be closed with this merge request. All right, so Q&A. Okay, strange setup, nonetheless. Okay. If I ever get a chuckle when I see Chef as in programming languages, because someone presented Chef the application as if it was Chef the programming language. No one in the class said anything. Wait, what? Someone presented Chef the application. So they created a new application called Chef? Well, I have no idea. Or did they present it as a programming language, which it is by half, I'd say. Of course, it's Ruby, but it's a DSL, it's a domain-specific language for automating infrastructure. In that sense, it is a programming language. Depends on your definition, though. Have I built websites at scale? What kind of problems do you run into at scale that you don't run into without it? Myself, the websites I've built don't or didn't run at scale. So the application with the most users is the user dashboard for our hosting platform, but it only has a few users at a time, so it's really nothing that needs high performance or something. It runs off a standard Heroku setup, so that's not something I would refer to in terms of running websites at scale. However, my whole job is running websites at scale, and that's the websites our clients want us to host. And I've got plenty of experience in that case. Not stuff I have written, but it's mostly Drupal and WordPress websites that run with sometimes hundreds of thousands of visitors. What are the problems there? I guess the problem is oftentimes access to data, because your website, if it's non-trivial, will have to have a database, and that database tends to become the single point of failure, because a standard setup only has one database that is used to read content from and to write updates to. Both can be a challenge, because depending on the content that gets read from the database, you can run into issues. You can run into issues with your database queries, for example. A database query can be complex. It can be hard to execute because it's overly complex. It can be hard to execute because you are missing indexes on the tables that it queries. The worst case is the database can't even use an index and needs to do a full table scan over the whole content of a table, which might contain hundreds of thousands or even millions of rows. That's definitely bad. But even if you have an index, another challenge could be that your result set is huge. I got a funny story there. In the beginning years, we had a customer complaining about database performance, and we looked at their database queries, and I think they were quite okay. We couldn't make out any issues with the queries themselves, and so our conclusion was, well, our database simply can't handle the required, can't deliver the required performance. So we actually built a new website, a new database. Back then, we decided to start using SSD-based storage, even though SSDs were still pretty small. I'm not sure if we built the database specifically for that client back then, but we replaced spinning Rust hard disks with SSDs. And what we hoped was that this would speed up the database enough to have low enough response times. And it did, but still the customer was complaining. Actually, the website was working less reliable than before, even though the website, the database probably tripled in performance or something like that. We still, again, investigated and found out that the database now delivered its result sets so fast that it saturated its network interface, which meant that the database wasn't reachable at all anymore, and that caused more downtime than the low performance the other database had before. We then upgraded the network bandwidth of these particular database hosts and resolved the issue for good. But we were totally flabbergasted how this new database, which probably was only used by this single customer, because we certainly hadn't added other customers to that database yet, was so much faster, and still our customer wasn't happy because their website was down all the time. And that was each time they launched one of these monster queries, the database had to pump gigabytes of data through its network interface, and so it went down completely. So that's one thing that you need to consider at scale. The volume of your data, the quality of your queries, the setup of your database indices. These are all issues that you get at scale. Of course, you can also scale a database. You can add database copies, replicates of your main database, and you could split up your read load between these databases. However, you'll still have the issue of write traffic, because you can't scale out writes because of the synchronization issue. You'll always get into race conditions and update conflicts. So dealing with write load is a really hard problem, because you almost can only you can only partition your write load by saying, okay, this customer writes into this database and this customer writes into this database, or you partition by different criteria, or you can simply go the old way and vertically scale your write node by adding more CPUs, by adding bigger pipes to the network and things like that. Those are two attributes. I was very lazy in assigning types to the attributes, didn't have indices, didn't paginate data on the server. Yeah. These are all interesting things. Also, something that we often see is with, for example, WordPress plugins or Drupal modules, where the authors didn't think of running things at scale. Even if they actually have tests for their code, which thankfully many have, often they only test pretty trivial workloads, and that's when our customers run into problems, when they actually add such a plugin or module to their code, and it might even work perfectly in staging with a low workload, and then they deploy it to production where they get millions of page views per day, and suddenly you can see, okay, the way this plugin is built, the way this module accesses the database, that simply can't work if you get hundreds of queries per second or thousands of queries per second. So that's another issue that we often run into, where we can easily see, okay, this plugin was never tested at this kind of scale. Franchise verige, which means French and Swedish, I guess. Hey, how you doing? Welcome to Full Stack Live. What are the main steps to become a DevOps coming from the web dev area? Well, that's a perfect starting point, I guess. If you are already into web development, you can simply step down the layers in the stack by, for example, looking at these things that are more operational than developmental. And yes, there are things like the DevOps roadmap that Dota 2 Attitude just mentioned, where you take a look at what is important to set up a database schema to run reliably and with high performance. What are things that I need to configure in the back end if I can't tune my database performance? For example, that's where other services come in. If you have to query the database and render a complex set of HTML every time you get a request, that might simply take too much time. If each of your web requests takes a second to be processed by querying the database, assembling the whole HTML and things like that, over and over again for every visitor that comes along, you probably will have to add additional services like a caching proxy, such as Varnish, for example. You might want to help the database by caching page fragments in something like Redis or Memcached, where you render parts of your page only once and store the result in a memory-based database such as Redis or Memcached, and then retrieve the already pre-rendered stuff from there instead of querying and processing it over and over again. So thinking about system architecture that's necessary to build more sophisticated setups than simply I have an application server running Ruby or PHP and a database like MySQL or Postgres, and that's it. Extending things to a more sophisticated setup will definitely get you into the ops side of things. And the quickest way to get into DevOps is probably getting a pager or adding your mobile number to something like PagerDuty, which alerts you every time your website delivers an error, every time your database goes into high load, every time your Nginx workers run out of processes, things like that. Once you get paged day and night for these things, that will definitely get you into DevOps, and it'll be stressful, and it'll be a tremendous learning experience. Thanks for the link to the DevOps roadmap, Dota 2 Attitude. That's definitely helpful. Actually, let's switch into talk. In general terms, how do you set up a staging environment? That depends on your requirements, I'd say. For our customers, the staging environment is often simply their production cluster, where they add additional website instances for staging, for user acceptance testing and things like that. That's the least expensive solution, of course, but it can have impact because it'll run on the same infrastructure as the production website. So a different approach would be to have a similar setup for your staging environment. Maybe, in our case, getting a second hosting plan, just with less capacity, but with more or less the same setup, the same kind of database and things like that. So you can still compare, or you can have a certain level of confidence that if it runs on staging, it'll run on production. Because the more your staging environment differentiates from your production environment, the less confidence you can have that success in staging will automatically mean success in production. So if money isn't an issue, you will get two runtime environments that are completely identical. Then you can actually deploy to staging, you can do load testing, everything that's necessary to be sure that once you deploy the same code to the production environment, it'll do its job. I guess that's the whole spectrum, with one polar opposite being my staging environment is completely identical to the production environment in capacity, in setup, in technology, and the other polar opposite would be, well, it runs on my laptop. That's definitely the least reliable way to do testing. And there's a whole range in between, where you have a separate staging environment that's more than your laptop, but still more affordable than having a clone of your production environment. There is certainly a golden middle somewhere. You're welcome, Frenchie Isverige. Why do large clients choose WordPress? For example, people with lots of traffic. That's a question that we ask ourselves sometimes as well, but hey, it's our job. Wait, let me get rid of that. So, stream is going to wrap up soon, but let's answer the final questions here. A more serious answer would be people want to actively avoid the not invented here syndrome. Of course, you can go and build your own content management system where you have exactly what you need and where you can avoid the errors that you think developers at Automatic or in the Drupal community have made. However, how realistic is that? I mean, these are both two huge open source communities with immense brain power. And even though you have the issue that I described earlier, where some plugin author might never have thought of the possibility that their plugin will be used on a website that gets millions of page requests per day, there's also a lot of stuff that's in these content management systems that's really, really sophisticated, that went through a review process and through an evolution over years of DevOps experience, where, for example, in Drupal, you already have multi-database support. I think even WordPress has it by now, where you can actually scale out your read load over multiple database nodes, where you only need an operations team that also is able to run multiple databases in a replication setup, but where the code is already built for that, and you simply configure the names of your different database nodes and it works. So it's always a struggle between use something that already exists and build it yourself, but especially if we are talking about use cases with high demand, with high requirements, I think you will always be better off using something that has been battle tested over years, like WordPress, like Drupal, instead of building something yourself, because only by going through the same kind of code evolution over years and years and years, you might eventually reach the same level of performance and sophistication. But I don't think the chance is high in the first place. Sea Films, hello! Welcome to Full Stack Live. Happy to see you here. And Creature Next, take care of yourself. Have a nice day. Yeah, I think avoiding this not invented here syndrome, or the if we build it ourselves, it will be much, much better. That might be over-optimistic. It's like me trying to build a web server myself, even though Apache and Nginx have solved this problem long ago and have been tested in all kinds of environments. Anything new with me? Depends on your state of update. What's definitely new is that I'm running from Windows now, not from macOS. I recently switched my setup here from an iMac to a Windows gaming laptop, and I'm going to publish a blog post about that. I'm not going into that again now, because I'm about to wrap up. It's almost 6 o'clock and it's almost dinner time for me. We had a nice session today, doing some coding, some chef cookbook updates, and also a nice Q&A round here at the end. My plan is to be back tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Irish time. I hope that'll come true. I'll do my best. Thank you, C Films. And we can continue our chat there and then. As always, if you want to continue chatting, join me on my Discord server. And you can find me on Twitter @gwiz, or here on Twitch soon enough. So thanks for stopping by, everyone. It was a lot of fun, and we had a lot of fun chatting. I hope my answers helped you a little bit. And if not, pop by tomorrow and we'll give it another try. See you then. Take care.